Was your FAA medical certificate deferred or denied? My name is Chase, and I created this video to inform pilots like you who want to learn about how the process works. Going through the lengthy process, I was eager to learn everything there is to know about it, and I was frustrated by the limited information available online. This video provides detailed descriptions of each step I took in the process, as well as dates to show the timeline I experienced. I will break down the different steps in each chapter of the video, so if you need a specific detail, check it out. I'm not a professional content creator, I'm just sharing all the information I can to help anyone. So, let's get started with my story. Let me introduce myself and what got me into this battle with the FAA. I'm a student pilot pursuing my private pilot certificate. I started training in June of 2024. On the medical side of things, I was diagnosed with a low-grade glioma brain tumor. It's another long story, but I'm fully healed with no complications or chance of regrowth. My hospitalization happened over 14 years ago as of today, and still to this day, I'm all clear. I applied for a first-class medical certificate and have been through the lengthy process in an attempt to obtain the certificate. Later in this video, I will summarize some of the findings within my medical records I submitted. However, it's worth noting my neurosurgeon noted in his own notes that I was not a normal neurosurgery patient, meaning I walked out of the surgery like it never happened. After a quick recovery period, of course. What a miracle. Back in August of 2024, I had 2 appointments with my aviation medical examiner. I had no idea that I would have to go through this process because I know I'm fully healthy. I figured I would walk out of her office with my first class certificate in hand. At my first appointment, she told me about the certification process and asked me about my medical history to discover any reason that I would need to be denied or deferred. I have no mental health history and no major issues other than a brain surgery to resect a tumor. She told me that it would result in a deferral. For her to continue that process that day, I would be committing to providing the FAA whatever they requested. It's important to know that in every step of the process, you must follow the exact instructions that the FAA tells you. You're at their mercy for certification, do not jeopardize it. Most deferred applicants get denied because they didn't submit to what the FAA asked for. I went home and thought about it, and then I scheduled a second appointment with my aviation medical examiner and decided to commit to the process. My AME said I had a flawless exam. However, due to my medical history, she had to defer me. My exam was on August 12th, 2024, and I received my FAA deferral letter a whopping 2 months later on October 10th. The FAA's list was small, but a lot of information and a hefty task to accomplish. We anticipated a current MRI scan, so we had scheduled one in advance, and we were correct. The FAA asked for a current MRI, a specific list of medical records, and a current neurological evaluation by a board-certified neurologist. Here are photos of the letter detailing the information that they requested. I'll keep them up for a couple of seconds, but please pause the video to read in detail. Over the next couple of months, I worked with my family to gather everything I needed to mail to the Civil Aerospace Medical Institute, or CAMI, in Oklahoma City. As I mentioned previously, I already had an MRI scheduled on October 20th. It was a simple MRI of my brain, and all was clear once again. MRIs will range in price, but out-of-pocket costs tend to be near $6,000. Let me note one thing. Sometimes the given 60 days is not enough time for you to submit all of the documents to the FAA. While I have heard you will generally be okay to miss the deadline, meaning no penalties if you miss it, it's still nice to ask to extend your deadline. In my experience, you have to get the right agent to do it early. The first time I called on November 15th, I was told I called too early in advance of my deadline. I was going to be out of the country close to my deadline, so I wanted to call early. I tried again after the weekend and successfully extended my deadline another 60 days. That call ended up being okay, but expect to possibly call several times in case you need an extension. On December 11th, I had my neurological evaluation with a neurologist. The FAA does not designate specific FAA neurologists. They simply must have board certification to be eligible. I handed the specification sheet to the neurologist, and he reiterated that these evaluations were industry standards.
there was a Cochman short test of mental status exam I did that tested some of my interpretation skills audibly and visually. For example, read this sentence and do what it says. It said something like blink twice, so quite simple. Short-term memory of 3 words was another test, and reading an analog clock's current time. The evaluation also included a small test of motor skills, such as walking heel to heel, tapping my fingers, etc. It was a quick appointment, and the neurologist understood that his written report would be submitted to the FAA. Please ensure that they know to follow the specification sheet, as the FAA could deny you if they don't. In this case, ensure the neurologist understands that you, the airman, will need the report in your hand to submit to the FAA. The hospital or neurologist does not do this for you. Now, gathering medical records was one of the lengthier tasks. My hospitalization was 7 days, and I was kept under surveillance for 10 years. I needed to submit records that matched the list the FAA provided, as well as all of the MRI scans I had over the years on a CD. Yes, the FAA is that old. My family and I sifted through about 1,200 pages of medical records and were able to narrow it down to about 100 pages. I had to track down 3 different CDs from 2 different hospitals. Sorting through all of these took a couple of weeks, but it will likely speed up the process in response time in Oklahoma City. It's kind of self-explanatory that you just have to sort your medical records into their respective categories, and it's not much more complex than that. It's easy, however, it'll take some time to sort the documents. Mailing documents seems like a simple task. However, I highly encourage you to organize your package nicely and write a correspondence letter explaining what you've enclosed. I cannot guarantee this will speed up your response time. However, they responded to me in a month, so maybe they liked my package to a certain extent. Let me walk you through what I did. The FAA names its requested documents in a list. Maybe there's a meaning behind it, maybe not. I placed my records in that specific order, top to bottom, literally. In between the categories, I printed the category title to divide sections of paper. Here's an example. The bottom of my package contained all of my previous MRI reports, with the words radiology reports printed on a single page. Then it was the pathology report, operative/procedure report, and so on. At the top, I placed my correspondence to explain what I did clearly. I also placed the CDs on top so that they were easily accessible. Keep your letter concise, as they're already reading a lot more. I used up 1 page, double-spaced. I finally mailed my package on January 17th, 2025. I mailed it via USPS priority mail with a signature confirmation to verify it got delivered. Please do this. Sure, it's a little more expensive, but it ensures fast delivery and gives you proof that the FAA received and acknowledged your delivery. Plus, it's your medical records. You probably want it to be safe. The package was delivered on January 21st, and MedExpress did not show they scanned in the documents until a few days later. They said their usual response time would be 60 business days. That unfortunately calculated out to the end of April. The review period began on January 22nd, and I watched MedExpress like a hawk. When your file is in review, the computer at the FAA office gives it a name and dates each document. I had hospital summaries that were specific to my treatment, and I found one odd document. My correspondence letter was actually dated January 1st of the year 1900. My grandma wasn't even alive back then. Regardless, you can see all of the documents that are scanned in by the FAA. In my case, there was an incorrect categorization of a document. It said that 2 of my documents were cancer narratives. I didn't have any cancer, but do not worry, this is a computer error that does not affect any certification decisions. I was hopelessly checking MedExpress for any update nearly every day, and eventually, there was a change in status. On February 18th, the status changed to final review as shown. The final review took their exact claim time, 2 business days. Unfortunately for me, on February 20th, 2 hours later after the office in OKC opened, I checked again and saw the stop sign and the red words, "You are not medically cleared to operate an aircraft," and I was extremely frustrated and disappointed. I got so hopeful because I know I'm capable of flying safely. I've received the FAA denial letter on February 27th explaining the reason for the denial and what the next steps look like. They denied me simply because I had the tumor, and they said if I wanted to ask for reconsideration, I would have to get a full neuropsychological evaluation done. Hooray, another step. The FAA cited 14 CFR 67.109 paragraph B, which explains the neurological components of medical certification. That paragraph is slightly ambiguous because it's not exact, and it's hard to find information on what constitutes me being unable to perform the duties of my certificate. However, I was fully ready to ask for reconsideration and began to search for the right neuropsychologist. The FAA gave me until August 31st, 2029 to ask for reconsideration. I expected 30 days. This date comes from my initial exam back in August of 2024, and a third-class medical would have been valid for 60 calendar months from August 2024. Random at first, but makes sense afterwards. I was still in this battle, and now it was time to find an aviation neuropsychologist. Now, I certainly wish this process was over. However, I still had a wild journey throughout. Unlike the neurologist I saw before, the neuropsychologist has to be designated by the FAA. They know what they are doing and have access to very specific tests needed for the FAA report. I found a very kind and awesome neuropsychologist in my area. I'm in Oregon, and the FAA only has 2 for my state, both located in Portland, Oregon. I didn't know FAA neuropsychologists existed until the FAA told me. My neuropsychologist told me that the FAA keeps them off to the side quite a bit. She was very communicative, and I fortunately got a quick appointment because someone else canceled theirs. Now, this is the unfortunate part about these exams. I reached out to several to try and get the best price. I needed a full neuropsychological exam. I paid $3,500 for the exam. The cheapest I came across was around $3,000, and the most expensive, $5,000. It's really expensive and not feasible for many people, but assuming you do get the exam, here's what happens. These exams can vary in how much time they take. My neuropsychologist said to plan for a full 9 to 5, but it likely won't take that much time. I spent a total of 5 hours of almost straight testing in the office. There's an FAA-designed cog screen exam that you take. I actually cannot talk about it because I signed away rights to disclose what's inside it, as the FAA does not want people preparing for it or telling anyone about what it's like, just like I want to. I cannot share because I don't want the FAA to deny me because I broke their contract. You can find brief info at cogscreen.com. However, the day includes many tests that evaluate your memory, multitasking, general knowledge, some motor skills, skills under pressure, etc. Many tests are industry standard tests in the neuropsychology world. The last test I had to do was a 656 true-false questionnaire about myself. That took me about another 3 hours at home. My neuropsychologist let me take it at home, however, you may have to do it in the office. She said I was definitely tech savvy, being young, and I can easily access it. Don't overthink it, or you'll get false results that you're an unhealthy 97-year-old. After all of this, there were still frustrations that I dealt with. The last thing for the neuropsychologist to do was to review my medical records that the FAA has. In order for that to happen, you have to fill out a request form and either mail it or fax it to them. In my 18 plus years on Earth and being Gen Z, I've never used a fax machine. I faxed a request early on and thought it went through. I thought wrong. I called the FAA after my evaluation and they never got my request from several weeks ago. I tried a total of 6 faxes and I put one in the mail right before the 6th, and of course, they finally got it. Them not receiving any of my faxes never hurt my case. However, it just slowed me down. Please check with the FAA by calling their office in Oklahoma City to ensure they've received their request. Once they mail the records, they will also mail a first-class letter to you or whoever requested it, informing you that the FAA has fulfilled this request. Now, at the time I'm writing this script, I didn't ever think I would add this call and wait section, but here I am. The FAA went below my expectations of their processing speed. I cannot emphasize this enough. Plan to wait. I thought after my neuropsych exam, I would have been medically certified by May or mid-May, my appointment being March 21st. It was May 9th when I wrote this. I'm incredibly frustrated, as you may suspect, and honestly, my patience was dwindling more and more. When you call them, please be kind to them despite your frustration. At this time, I was asking about the status of my medical records request. They know those terms and will ask for your PI number to look it up for you. After what felt like slow, painful days, the records were finally mailed on May 13th, and my neuropsychologist said she received them on May 16th, and was finally able to turn the report around in one day. On May 29th, the FAA had the second report in review. That report is the one that my neuropsychologist sent. I don't know what it contained other than test results, her conclusion, and a written report. But I did not have to submit a second package as if I was a deferred applicant. I have no idea how large the report was, so I didn't know when to expect any decision from the FAA. Would it be 1 month like my first decision, or would it be another 6? I kept calling about every 1.5 to 2 weeks with just a little bit of hope left. I checked the FAA Airman Registry pretty much every day, just hoping for any change. Fortunately, on Thursday, July 10th, I woke up and checked my registry without thinking too much, and I saw that my profile had medical data. At that moment, I'm like, hold up, no way that's real. There's absolutely no way. So I log into MedExpress to see if anything there has changed. And confirming everything, there's a green check mark with the rest of the page telling me my certificate is issued and how I will receive it. And my last check is to call the FAA to confirm it. They were very busy on the first attempt, so I tried again a few minutes later and waited in a line for about 5 minutes. I asked to check my status, and sure enough, the agent replied with, "Your medical certificate was issued this morning and it's already in the mail." Woohoo! I'm now medically airworthy to fly an aircraft with a Class 1 medical, no limitations. My path wasn't as short as walking in and walking out with my medical at my AME, but I got here, and I'm ready to start flying again. I want to take a moment to thank my family, friends, instructor, and doctors for all their support in assisting me to become certified. And at last, here it is, my medical certificate in hand. Before you leave, I have a final few remarks. My family and I navigated this with no help from organizations or lawyers. I'm not saying that you should not use them, it's just that it's possible not to. My process was to check boxes that were sent by the FAA, and eventually I got there with some waiting involved. AOPA's Pilot Protective Services and firms such as Wingman Med are in place to keep you flying. They just might not be financially feasible for everyone, and that's okay. Certification requires patience, so limit your resignation mindset. I've created a website that condenses some of the information and showcases some other aspects of this journey. There are links to some other success stories I have found, specifically on Reddit's r/flying subreddit. I'm fortunate enough to be able to add mine to the list. Please check out the website for the gallery of images, stories, and timeline at medicallyairworthy.com.
Please share this video with pilots and applicants like me who may be in a similar situation. Medical certification is not always easy, however, it's rewarding once you're able to become medically airworthy. My name is Chase, and thank you so much for listening to my story. God bless and fly safe.